On the day of my husband's birthday, I invited everyone, our parents, his colleague, even his sister into our bedroom. Why? Because I wanted them to see the truth. And trust me, what they saw, no one will ever forget. It started like every perfect love story. Flowers, moonlight walks, whispered promises. Daniel was charming, attentive, everything I thought I ever wanted. But behind that smile was a secret so big it would shatter our marriage, humiliate him in front of everyone he loved, and turn me into the woman no one dared to underestimate again. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about a plan. A perfectly executed revenge served in front of the entire family. If this is your first time coming across this channel, please subscribe, like and share this video. You wouldn't want to miss this unforgettable story. Daniel was magnetic. He had this quiet confidence, never loud, never boastful, but always the center of attention. At parties, people loved being around him. He remembered names, asked thoughtful questions, made everyone feel like they mattered. To me, he felt like a dream. Our courtship was full of romance. Every Friday, without fail, he brought me flowers, always wrapped in brown paper, always with a handwritten note. He took me to art galleries where he whispered about brushstrokes and meaning. Even dinner nights, he was cultured, gentle, and mysterious. But the mystery had edges. He never talked about past relationships, not even for once. When I asked, he would smile and say, "Nothing worth remembering." He avoided physical affection in public, said he didn't like DPA. And he had a group of male friends, handsome, stylish, always together. He never introduced me to them, said they were just old college buddies. I ignored the signs. I told myself, he's just private, that's all. Our wedding was a fairy tale. Daniel cried during the vows, but his tears felt heavy, not joyful, not overwhelmed. They felt like grief. I asked him later, "What were you thinking when you cried?" He said, "I just love you so much, Mimi." I believed him. I was too in love to see the cracks. Zanzibar was paradise. White sand that felt like powdered sugar beneath my feet. Sunset dinners under palm trees with candlelight flickering between us. It should have been magical. It should have been the beginning of forever. But Daniel was somewhere else. Not physically. He was right here beside me. But emotionally, he was miles away. He spent hours on his phone, always checking work emails, always handling something urgent. I'd glance over and see him smiling, laughing quietly to himself, his fingers dancing across the screen like he was testing someone who made him feel alive. I asked, "What's so funny, Daniel?" He barely looked up. "Just a missed sticker," he said. He never showed me. On the third night, I decided to try. I wanted to feel wanted. I wanted to feel like his wife, not his roommate. So I planned something special. I wore a red sleek nightgown, one I'd bought just for the honeymoon, lit candles around the room, played soft jazz from a speaker tucked behind the curtain. The scent of vanilla filled the air. I stood by the window, watching the moonlight spill across the bed, waiting for him to walk in. And when he did, he just paused. His eyes scanned the room, then landed on me. I smiled nervously, feeling hopeful. He looked at me for a moment, then said, "You didn't have to do all this, Mimi." No smile, no warmth, just indifference. He walked over, kissed my forehead like a brother. Then he pulled off his shirt, climbed into bed, and turned away. I stood there, stunned. The candles flickered, the music played on, but the moment had died. I crawled into bed beside him, curled up on the edge, and cried silently. I didn't want him to hear. I didn't want to seem dramatic. I didn't want to be too much. But inside me, I started asking myself questions. Had I married a man who didn't want me? Was I the problem? Maybe I wasn't sexy enough. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I was asking for too much. I whispered those thoughts to myself like lullabies, trying to smooth the ache, trying to make sense of the silence. But deep down I knew this wasn't love. This wasn't intimacy. This wasn't what I signed up for. And yet, I stayed quiet because I still believed in fairy tale, even as it was falling apart in paradise. Started with a feeling, not a loud one, not a scream, just a whisper. Something wasn't right. Daniel had changed. He was more distant than ever. He'd come home late, claiming work was overwhelming. He'll shower immediately, avoiding eye contact, and barely speak during dinner. I asked, "Are you okay?" He'd smile and say, "Just tired, babe. Long day." But the days were always long, and the nights were always cold. One evening, he came home smelling like a different perfume, not the one he normally wore. The smell was unfamiliar. I asked, "Did you change your scent?" He said, "Oh yeah, just trying something new." But I knew Daniel. He hated change. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My heart was racing. My mind was spinning. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I had to look. So the next day, I made a decision. I told Daniel I had errands to run. Instead, I drove to his office and parked across the street. I waited. Hours passed. I watched people come and go. I watched the sun dip lower in the sky. Then at 4:15 p.m., Daniel walked out of the building. Not 6:30 like he always claimed. He looked relaxed, smiling, not tired, not stressed. He got into his car and drove off. I followed. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My heart thundered in my chest. I stayed 2 cars behind, praying he won't notice. He drove across town, turned into a quiet neighborhood, pulled into the driveway of a small modern apartment. I parked down the street, watched from a distance. A few minutes later, the door opened. A man stepped out, young, stylish, confident. Daniel got out of his car, walked up to him. They hugged. Not a friendly hug, a slow, intimate embrace. Then they kissed softly, like they have done it 100 times before. I felt my stomach drop. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I watched as they went inside together. The lights came on. The curtains were drawn. I sat there for hours. And then at 9:30 p.m., Daniel walked out, got into his car, drove home. That was his routine. He didn't work late like he claimed. He didn't stay at the office. He spent his evenings with his lover, then came home to me, pretending, lying to my face. I drove home in silence, parked in the driveway, and walked inside. He was already in the shower. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing. The truth was louder than any scream. He had another life, and I had just seen it with my own eyes. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I wasn't going to confront him yet. Not without proof, not without something undeniable. I needed evidence, something that wouldn't be twisted or denied. So I bought a small camera, discreet, black and easy to hide. I turned to the apartment where I'd seen them together, parked in the same spot, and waited. At 4:10 p.m., Daniel's car pulled into the driveway again, right on schedule. The door opened. The same man stepped out, smiling. They embraced again, kissed again. Smiling. They embraced again, kissed again. I pressed record on my camera. The camera zoomed in, capturing every detail. Their faces, their hands, the way Daniel looked at him like he belonged there. I filmed everything until they went inside. Then I waited. At 9:30 p.m., Daniel left. Same routine. I followed him home, parked a few houses down our street, watched him walk inside. Then I drove to a quiet cafe, sat in the corner, plugged in my camera. I watched the footage again. It wasn't just betrayal. It was intimacy. It was love. And it wasn't mine. I saved the video in a secure folder, backed it up to the cloud, labeled it truth. I didn't cry. Not yet. I was past tears. I was building a case. The morning sun crept through the curtains like nothing was wrong. Daniel sat at the dining table, sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone. I stood by the sink, pretending to stir tea I had no intention of drinking. I thought of confronting him with all the evidence I had gathered of him cheating. My heart felt too heavy with disappointment, betrayal, and regret. I had loved this man with all my heart, and this is what I got in return. I looked at him, sitting there, looking at his phone, smiling with so much happiness in his face. Then I decided I wasn't going to confront him directly again. Rather, I will make him feel my pain and disappointment. That evening, as he sat on the bedroom sofa, I walked up to him and told him that my mother had collapsed in the countryside and I needed to travel urgently to see her. That I was sorry I would miss his birthday, which was coming up in 2 days' time. But I promised once I come back, I will give him an unforgettable present. He looked up to me, facing concern. Oh no, babe, that's terrible. Of course, babe. Go be with her. I kissed his cheek, packed a small bag, ready to leave the next day. At midnight, he went to his study to call his lover as usual. The door cracked open and I was eavesdropping into their conversation. "She will be gone," he said. "We will have the whole house to ourselves. I will make love to you right here in my matrimonial bed. I want to wake up next to you," Daniel told his lover. My heart felt like it stopped breathing when I heard him say those words. I held myself, trying not to cry. It was all part of my plan. I knew he would bring him over to the house if I wasn't around. And just as I expected, he had fallen into my trap. When morning finally came, I took my bag, was about leaving when he offered to drop me to the train station. He looked so cheerful and excited, like someone going on a first date with his crush. I acted calm, trying not to raise any suspicion. He dropped me off at the train station. Immediately he left, I turned back. I checked into a hotel just 10 minutes away from our house, and I started making calls. I called his sister, his parents, my parents, our closest friends, and told them. I knew I said I would be away, but I want to surprise Daniel for his birthday. Please, we mustn't ruin the surprise by telling him ahead of time. Let's all show up at 7 p.m. sharp. Bring cake, balloons, music, everything. They were thrilled. Everyone adored Daniel. To them, Daniel was perfect. Everyone wanted to celebrate him, so no one suspected a thing. On the day of his birthday, I sat in my car down the street, watching, waiting. At 6:30 p.m., Daniel pulled into the driveway. His lover, T, was with him. They laughed, held hands, touching each other as they walked inside like they owned the place. By 7:05 p.m., everyone was already present. Family, friends, and co-workers. I told them to gather at a street block very close to my house so we could all go inside at once as a united family. They were all excited to surprise the birthday boy, but the surprise was theirs, not mine. They all walked in together without a single sound. It was a surprise after all. The bedroom door cracked open, and there he was, Daniel, on our matrimonial bed with T, naked, entwined, lost in passion. Gasps filled the room. His mother screamed. His father turned away. His sister froze, and his colleagues were speechless. Daniel leaped up, scrubbing for clothes. T, his lover, hid under the bed. But it was too late. The truth was out. I walked in last, calm, composed, and unshaken. Daniel's eyes met mine, wide, terrified, and pleading. I smiled. "Happy birthday, darling." Then I turned to the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. I told Daniel I'd make this birthday unforgettable. I think we nailed it." And I walked out. The door slammed behind me, and the silence left inside was louder than any scream. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what they saw. Daniel, naked and exposed, caught in the act with his lover on the bed we once shared. And I had ostracized every second of it. I drove back to the hotel in silence. No music, no tears, just the sound of my own breath, steady, strong, and free. The calls started pouring in that night. His sister, my cousin, his best friend, my mother, everyone wanted answers. Mimi, did you know? Mimi, why didn't you tell us? Mimi, are you okay? I answered calmly, yes, I knew. Yes, I planned it. And no, I'm not broken. Some were shocked, some were angry, some were speechless, but no one blamed me because the truth was undeniable. Daniel had lied, cheated, used me as a shield for a life he was too afraid to live honestly. The next morning, Daniel showed up at the hotel. He looked wrecked, eyes swollen, hair messy. His voice was trembling. Mimi, please, he begged. Let me explain. I opened the door just enough to look him in the eye. You already did, Daniel, I said, with your body in front of everyone. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. You didn't just cheat. You built a life behind my back. You planned it. You invited him into our home, into our matrimonial bed. On your birthday, he dropped to his knees. I was scared, he sobbed. I didn't know how to be honest. I didn't want to lose you. I stared at him. You lost me the moment you chose your lover over truth. He reached for my hand and I pulled away. You don't get to cry now, Daniel. You don't get to beg. You don't get to rewrite the story. I closed the door, and this time it stayed closed. In the days that followed, the whispers spread. Some people defended him, said he was confused. Some said he was struggling. But most people saw it for what it was. It was a betrayal, a deception, a coward's way out. His parents stopped calling. His sister blocked him. His job put him on leave. And as for me, I started living. I moved into a new apartment, painted the walls soft gold, brought fresh flowers every week, started my journalism again. I joined a support group for women who had been lied to. We shared stories, we cried, we healed. I started writing my own story, not the fairy tale I thought I had, but the truths I earned. I wasn't just surviving, I was rising. I changed my hair, cut it short, dyed it copper. It felt bold, fierce, and free. I bought clothes that made me feel powerful, not to impress anyone, just to remind myself who I was. I stopped cooking for someone who didn't appreciate it, started learning recipes for myself, spicy, rich, indulgent meals that made me feel alive. I lit candles at night, played music while I danced barefoot in my living room, laughed at my own jokes, slept diagonally across the bed. I wasn't lonely, I was whole. She was betrayed, she was broken, but she didn't stay that way. Rather, she rose, stronger, wiser, and louder. No longer waiting to be chosen, she chose herself. This isn't the end of her story, it's just the beginning. So if you are listening to this and you have ever been lied to, used, or made to feel small, let me tell you something. You are not weak. You are not foolish. You are not alone. You are fire. You are light. You are worthy of a love that doesn't hide. And remember, the end of one chapter is just the beginning of your own. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and share this story. Your support keeps these tales alive.